Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I am the author of the young adult fantasy novel Firian Rising, and this is English Nerd. And today I am with a special guest, Jessi Elliott. So, hello. Yes, the author of the Twisted Fate, Twisted Gift, and Twisted Desire, which just came out a couple of days ago. So that is her newest release. They're all adult fantasy novels, or not fantasy, sorry, adult romance novels with a fantasy twist.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, then check out her books, and most definitely check out her channel. It has a lot of just author lifestyle kind of advice, and I know that I've enjoyed it. So, hey.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat about all of the things.
Awesome. Yeah, so I actually contacted you asking if you'd be interested in talking about morally gray characters, because I know that we both write them in very different ways, obviously. Yours with a much more of a romantic spin, and then mine with a more fantasy kind of side to things. But yeah, so that's our topic for today. All right. So Jessi, since we both write these morally gray characters and we enjoy reading them as well, what are some of the reasons that you gravitate toward writing characters that aren't strictly good or evil but kind of ride that line?
I think they're the most fun to write because when I'm writing them, I kind of don't necessarily know which direction they're going to go in, which I hope then relays to the reader, not knowing if they're going to make the best choice for them and the nicest thing, or if they're just gonna turn and do the worst thing possible and destroy everyone. And it's kind of fun because you get to pick those moments when you're maybe expecting them to do the thing, and then they're super kind, and then you're like, oh, I love them. And that for me works the best in romance, because I'm if you're expecting him to be a jerk and he's super sweet, you're kind of intrigued by it and also thrown off at the same time, which is my favorite when I'm reading, and I try to bring that into my own writing. So they're just a lot of fun because they're so unpredictable, I think.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my next question. So do you intentionally take these characters of your own and make them mostly bad, but then at these key moments make them do the right thing just to kind of keep the readers guessing?
Yeah, and kind of also to keep my main character second guessing herself, or because in my Twisted series, not my main character and her love interest Tristan, but the side character that we get to kind of spend more time with in book 2. His name is Nikolai, who Twisted Desire is actually about, along with one of the other side characters. He you think he's in book 1 for a second, one scene, and you're kind of he's the bad guy, but then all of a sudden you're he's not, though. He's he's not good or evil. He does things that he believes is justified, which, I mean, villains do that too, but at the same time,
I think everybody does that to one degree or another.
Yeah, no, definitely, because everybody has their reasons for doing things, and their experiences and their beliefs definitely come into play in their decision making. But I think that Nikolai he's probably been my most morally gray character, at least to start with. I mean, I think he came into his character a lot more, and I don't necessarily think in Twisted Fate he was definitely morally gray, but he grew throughout Twisted Gift and his experiences with my main character. So then in Twisted Desire, I think he's pretty good. He would definitely agree that he's very good at everything. But yeah, so, and I think that you don't have to keep a morally gray character that way. You can have them choose if they're gonna go to the dark side or if they're gonna go to the light side, and that's fun too, especially when they pick the dark side, in my opinion. But yeah.
Okay, so just all having that morally gray aspect as part of their arc, and they're eventually going to choose a side, but you don't know which one.
Yeah. I mean, and they don't necessarily have to choose, but I think either way, if they choose, that could be fun. You could do a bunch of things with that, or have them not choose, have them play both sides, and that can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. I agree. Some of my favorite characters are just morally gray all the way through, and you're trying to piece out, okay, what is good about this character that I should actually look up to, and what's maybe not so good but really interesting that I want to follow. So what is one of the best gray protagonists that you've either read or written in the last couple years?
I don't know if I've written any. I think I would love to in the future, just because the back and forth and the questioning, like good or evil, is like a long-standing debate. But I'm trying to think. Protagonists. I guess like good and evil, light and dark, however you want to class it, is super subjective. But I was going to talk about Cardan from the Cruel Prince. He's a love interest and sort of a villain. But at the same time, this book, everybody knows what it is. Jude is almost, who's the main character, is almost morally gray, in that she does a lot of things that aren't necessarily good, but she has reasons for them. So I think she's probably a good example of a morally gray character, just because she goes back and forth between doing really good things, like taking care of her sisters, but then doing really bad things, like kind of, and the bad things that she does is kind of in retaliation to bad things being done to her, but at the same time, like, two wrongs don't make a right. So what she's doing necessarily isn't okay or acceptable, but it is what it is. And so, yeah, I think Jude is probably, I haven't done a lot of reading in the last while because writing, but this would probably be the best example that I can think of as of, like, recent reads.
Nice. So I know that since both of us write these characters, it's occurred to me that, at least in my opinion, there's at least a slight moral obligation that you have to your audience. Like, for instance, if you're writing YA, you don't want to promote suicidal thoughts, you don't want to promote these really negative things. And obviously there's a lot of leeway about how you can deal with tough topics and shouldn't shy away from them or anything. But do you think that there is a line at all with creating morally gray characters? Like, how clear should you make it, what the better side of a character is as opposed to the worse side?
Ooh, that is, like, I almost want to, like, I want to say right off the bat that I don't know, because I don't.
I know it's hard for there to be a hard line, but just,
right?
like, yeah. Where, if there were a line, what would be over it?
I feel like you would know if you wrote it, because, like you said, you don't want to shy away from those hard topics just because they're hard and they make you uncomfortable. Like, those are the things that people want to read these days. They want to have these books, especially in young adult, where the author is calling out these difficult topics and tackling them. But again, you have to be the right person to do that. Or you're gonna be told that, hey, that wasn't your story to tell. So I don't know. There's definitely a line, but I think it is sometimes blurred, and it's hard to really tell, because you're going to come to that point where you're like, is this still YA? Because if you're talking about, like, even YA does have mature subject matter, but it's in terms of, you have to think of the age group that the cast of characters is and what they're experiencing, because you're not going to see, like, YA characters experiencing, like, divorce and miscarriages and, like, those super difficult topics. Those main characters in YA might see it happening to older characters, but if you really want to tackle that from, like, your main character's perspective, I think you have to be okay with the fact that you're no longer writing for a younger audience, and you might have to age it up. I know one of Colleen Hoover's books, she is really great, I think, at tackling super difficult topics. I don't believe it was her latest book. Oh, though it might have been. It's called All Your Perfects, and it deals with they're adult characters. So she writes romance, but they're still it's still just like general fiction, I find, in some aspects, because it's about a man and a woman and their relationship and their marriage kind of like deteriorating, and it's like surrounded by miscarriage. So like Colleen does write young adult, but she would never write that sort of thing in a young adult novel, I don't think, because it wouldn't work, and like her publisher just wouldn't let it happen. So I think you definitely need to just be mindful of what audience you're writing to, and I think that for the most part people know that, and it's not, we're not seeing it too much, because especially with traditional publishing there are so many gatekeepers, like your agent, your editor, like everybody at the publishing house. So we're not seeing it a lot, but at the same time, like in this day and age of pushing that line and kind of like testing the waters about stepping over it, I think we are seeing it more and more. But I'm scared to like tackle it myself, because I'm like, I don't know if I feel confident knowing what I've gone too far. So like I would hope that I would know, like writing it, if I'm feeling not good about it as I'm writing it, then it's probably not a safe territory to step into. But I mean, some authors just don't care and they just go for it, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I don't think I'll be one to tackle those types of things. But honestly, yeah, that was a long-winded answer and kind of danced all over the place, but there you go.
That's okay. It was a pretty tough question. I mean, it's hard to have an absolute concise answer for a topic that's that big, but since we were talking about morally gray characters, I thought it was at least worth mentioning that there is that question of, okay, so these are some of our favorite characters, they're so fascinating, but when does that become like, I want to be like this person? But to what degree kind of, should you be like that person?
Yeah, that kind of like jogs something in me. I know there's a lot, especially in the romance community, about like toxic relationships. We see it. It's in Twilight. It's in 50 Shades of Grey. It's in so many romances. And I even had it in my first book until my editor kind of said, hey, this is a red flag. This is not like, if you want to be mindful of this and not have it included, you need to edit this scene so it's less like predatory. But me personally, and I've kind of shared this, I'm not like shying away from it or trying to hide it, I enjoy like toxic relationships, but fiction only. Like I'm very aware of the fact that some people can't separate fiction from what they should aspire to have in relationships. But I love reading about these morally gray characters. Not that I would ever want to share a bed with one or be friends with one, but in fiction I just devour it, because it's so interesting and just keeps me turning the pages, and I just love it. But yeah, real life and fiction, as long as you can separate them, give me all the morally gray characters and like the awful people, because I love it.
Okay, so what are some of the ways that you have made your morally gray characters more likable, or that you've noticed in what you've read or seen? What is it that actually makes them some of the very best, in your opinion?
I think it's when they do those good things, and it's not even like they realize that they've done a good thing. Or, because like some characters you'll see are like, hey, I'm doing good things, but it's like they're only doing it to get the brownie points, and like as they're not good people, and they're like, I need to do this good thing so this person will like me, or something like that. But it's my favorite when they like do something for someone else, whether it be the main characters or someone else, and it has a super positive outcome and like a really good, makes everybody feel good, and they're just like, oh, like that was a good thing, I did a good thing. Because then you know they didn't do it for the wrong reasons, they did it for like they had good intentions. And I love when characters who usually have awful intentions do something good, and it's like they don't even realize it. It's the best.
Yeah, I'm such a, I mean, English Nerd's the name of my channel, so of course I'm thinking this, but have you ever read Crime and Punishment? Did you read that in school at all?
No.
Oh, okay. Well, It's about Raskolnikov, who is an axe murderer. He murders somebody at the beginning. It's pretty graphic and terrible. And in general, he's a horrible human being. But he has this compulsion to be generous at times. So he'll just be going along being the worst human being, and then he'll see this family in need and give them all of his money. And I'm just he's just coming to mind as you say that. I mean, it makes him more likable for sure, but it's not like the most endearing thing.
Right.
Because we know that he's so awful. I would highly recommend it, though. I mean, I know you generally don't read classics, and that's perfectly fine, but man, it's good. Good stuff.
That actually sounds like something that I would enjoy.
It's very cool. Yeah, I recommend it to most people. Some people love it, some people don't, but it's good. So, last question for you. What are some of those bad traits that you enjoy working into your own morally gray characters? Like, what are those things that make them simultaneously not too bad so that you hate them, and also keeps them interesting and human?
Well, that's hard, right? Because you gotta find the balance. Because if you're just like, you write this morally gray character that turns out to be more bad than good, you gotta give the reader something to find in them that's somewhat redeemable, so they're not just like, what? Like,
I'm so
I
with
hate
you.
this character. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, of course, the first thing that comes to mind, which is so superficial, but romance author, is make them super attractive. Obviously, that's like, doesn't do anything really, but it seems like every like evil character these days is like wildly attractive because they can't not be.
Right, it's easier to like them, and it's lame because you're reading. I mean, you can't even see this person, but you can, and it makes them more likable.
Yeah. I don't know. I find giving I guess, those types of characters, like a wicked sense of humor is great because, like, humor comes from usually such like a. Well, I mean, that's not true. I was gonna say it comes from like a place of goodness and like happiness, but that's not true. Humor can totally come from like darkness and like grief and all the different types of emotions, but I think if they can crack a joke, it just automatically makes them more personable because you're like, so they're not like a serious person all the time. I don't know if that like totally makes sense, but
no, it does. It kind of draws you in.
Yeah, they have to have not redeeming, but like interesting enough qualities, like, because if they're just like a flat character who's just like, I don't care what you think about me, and that's it, like there's nothing to them, then one, what's the point of having them there at all? Like, what are they doing other than just walking around the page, like making a mess of things and having everybody hate them? But at the same time, like, I find like super like light characters and all like the goody two shoes and like the heroes and the good guys, I guess, can sometimes.
Well, there's a spectrum. Like, there's a spectrum.
Yeah, no, for sure. But like, if there's a character that's literally never done any bad thing, and again, bad is subjective, but like the perfect character, you don't see them too often because like they don't exist. But sometimes people try, and I'm just not totally sure about it. Maybe because, like, I'm such a sucker for the dark side. I just need to, like, find the right one or get over my weird, like, fascination with it. I don't know, but it's hard to, I don't know. It's just, that's all I've got. Like, I could talk about dark characters forever, but, like, get me in a room and try to talk about what I love about, like, good characters, and I'm like, oh, they're fine. They make the world go round, but the dark characters are what make it fun. But the traits, like, they just, there's got to be something about them that calls to, I guess, the reader, and more importantly, like, the main character, especially if they're going to be the love interest, which I love doing, because enemies to lovers is my favorite trope. Even just, like, if they're not together forever, that's fine. but they've got to have some sort of interaction that you're like, your character has to sacrifice some of their goodness for. Because there's relationships that I really enjoy that your main character's like, I will never look at that person like that. They're too bad. Like, there's nothing redeemable about them. And then, like, fast forward a little bit and they're like, okay, maybe they're not so bad. And then fast forward a little bit more and they, like, have their first kiss and you're like, what? I thought that, you know. Anyways, I digress because I could talk about, like, enemies to lovers forever. But yeah, you just gotta find traits that are appealing. And I mean, I'm sure it's overdone a million times, but I'm not sick of it. And clearly other people aren't either, because people are still publishing books with these sort of character relationships in them. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, where can people find you online? Just as we wrap up here.
Everywhere. Search me everywhere. I'm on Facebook, though I don't love it too much. Twitter and Instagram the most. But yeah, if you just search Jessi Elliott or author Jessi Elliott, I'll come up and we can chat. Especially if you like Carden or the Darkling, or if you've read my books, then we can definitely talk. But yeah, thank you so much for having me, and sorry for talking so long about and rambling on, and I hope some of this is usable. I just love talking about this sort of thing.
No, that's great. I appreciate so much that you agreed to have this conversation with me, and it's always really interesting talking about this kind of thing with another person who writes and likes a lot of the same kinds of characters. So again, thank you so much, and hopefully I'll see you again.
Yes.